Welcome back to the Foundry by Forge College. Today we're rolling out the beige patent paper and orange ink to sketch out an absolutely unbreakable smart contract vault. We're mastering secure deposit patterns for Ether. I am so thrilled you're joining me for this explainer because, well, we're tackling something that sounds ridiculously simple, right? Just taking people's money. But honestly, messing this up has historically been the downfall of some of the absolute biggest projects in Web3. I mean, losing millions just because somebody forgot to lock the digital screen door? Yeah, it's a terrible look. So let's look at the exact architectural blueprints for handling incoming funds safely. Now, following up on our last lesson about risk management and those tricky mainnet versus devnet limitations, we really have to ask a kind of counterintuitive question. If a vault only takes money in, why on earth does its deposit door need such heavy protection? Honestly, it's a super fair question. You'd think taking money is the easy, safe part. But the Ethereum transaction lifecycle is incredibly complex. You've got gas consumption, state changes, and the exact order of execution within a single call frame. It all means that if your deposit schematic isn't perfectly structured, an attacker can actually exploit the exact moment you're trying to accept their funds to just drain your entire system. Wild, right? So here's our blueprint for today. 1. Choosing the right door. 2. Anatomy of a risky deposit. 3. Checks, effects, interactions. 4. The pull over push pattern. And 5. Securing your Ether deposits. Let's get to it.
Section 1. Choosing the right door. Selecting the safest entry point.
Okay, to build an unbreakable vault, you first have to choose the exact right front door. And in Solidity, your options for receiving Ether are absolutely not created equal. Take a look at the contrast here. On the left, we've got these vague implicit fallback doors. Relying on implicit functions like receive or fallback, it's literally like having a bank with just an open metal chute on the side of the building where people toss cash into the dark and just kind of hope you remember who tossed it. It is way, way too passive for a secure vault. On the flip side, using an explicit deposit function is like having a dedicated, highly trained teller window. It validates the transaction deliberately right there in the code, rather than trying to guess what the user wanted to do. When a user calls a specific function explicitly named deposit, there's zero ambiguity, none. You can firmly require that the incoming value is greater than 0, cleanly update your internal ledger, and, as a bonus, easily write tests to prove your engineering actually holds up. It makes your accounting completely undeniable. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of a Risky Deposit, How a Vault Gets Robbed. So, what exactly happens when our meticulously designed vault gets robbed? Well, when we contrast a secure deposit with a risky one here, the threat landscape shifts entirely based on one thing: external calls. In a secure deposit, the sequence is strictly internal. You validate the input, update the ledger, emit an event. Boom. The money stays in the building, keeping the attack surface nice and low. But in the risky variant, the contract accepts a deposit and then immediately forwards that Ether to a separate treasury before ever updating the user's balance. That single external call creates a massively high vulnerability in our schematic. And that external call opens the door to something called reentrancy. Think of this like a suspicious stranger who hands our distracted cashier a $100 bill and asks for it to be moved to the back room. But while the cashier turns around, the stranger repeatedly taps them on the shoulder, asking for their change again and again. Because the ledger hasn't been updated yet, the smart contract essentially has amnesia. It literally thinks it still owes the money. The attacker just loops that malicious callback into the vulnerable contract over and over until your vault is completely drained. Section 3. Checks, effects, interactions, the golden rule of vault security. So how do we engineer a foolproof standard operating procedure to prevent that smart contract amnesia? We use the CEI pattern, checks, effects, interactions. Guys, this is absolutely the golden rule of smart contract security. Step 1, checks. We validate the input, like is the deposit actually greater than 0? Step 2, effects. We write the new balance into our internal ledger. And finally, step 3, interactions. Only after the math is completely settled and recorded do we allow external calls or transfers to the outside world. The absolutely crucial point in this architectural blueprint is that you must mutate the contract state before making any external calls. You keep the ledger perfectly accurate before a single coin leaves the building. If an attacker tries to tap your cashier on the shoulder and re-enter your contract during that interactions phase, well, your contract simply looks at the ledger, sees the accounting is already fully updated, and just denies the malicious request. That inconsistent state, that brief little window of vulnerability, is completely eliminated because there's nothing left for an attacker to observe or exploit. All right, Section 4, the pull-over push pattern, handling referral payouts safely. Let's look at a slightly trickier scenario, automatic referral bounties. Let's say a 1% bounty goes to whoever referred the depositor. Now, automatically pushing that 1% out right away sounds great for user experience, right? But it completely violates our safety rules by forcing an external call right smack in the middle of our deposit logic. So instead of pushing cash out immediately mid-deposit, we use the pullover push pattern. We essentially give the referrer a claim ticket. We just record the owed amount in a separate internal ledger saying, hey, we owe you this much, and we require them to explicitly come pull their cash later in a completely separate transaction. Pushing payments out immediately triggers external calls, and if that referrer happens to be a malicious contract, pushing funds to them triggers their fallback function, allowing them to re-enter our deposit function and wreck our accounting. It's a huge reentrancy risk. However, pulling payments simply updates a referral owed ledger safely. This completely decouples the acceptance of incoming funds from your outgoing transfers, essentially shutting down that whole callback attack surface entirely. Sure, it might take an extra click for the referrer to get paid, but honestly, that slight inconvenience is the price of an unbreakable vault. Now, as an extra interlocking double door for our vault, we can add a reentrancy guard. Sometimes, despite your absolute best engineering efforts, complex cross-contract logic just requires external calls. In those rare cases, a reentrancy guard acts as a brilliant defense in depth lock. It's literally a simple mutex, a true or false Boolean lock that flips to locked the exact moment a function starts actively executing and flips back to unlocked when it finishes. If anyone tries to call back into the function while it's still running, the lock rejects them instantly. It is a fantastic backup though. Quick caveat, it should never ever replace proper checks effects interactions ordering. Section 5. Securing your Ether deposits. Final safety inspection. Okay, we've reviewed the blueprints, we've installed our locks, so before you start coding, let's do a final safety inspection. In the Advanced Applied Solidity development programs at Forge College, our students learn to absolutely live by this checklist. 1. Validate explicitly by using dedicated deposit functions. 2. Always apply checks effects interactions. Update your state first. 3. Prefer pullover push for payouts. Never push funds when you can safely pull them. And 4, fundamentally, treat any deposit paths with external callbacks with the exact same extreme caution as you would a withdrawal path. As you prepare to build concrete deposit mechanics in our next lesson, I want you to look at your code and ask yourself a slightly terrifying question. Is your deposit function secretly hiding a withdrawal? Like, are you inadvertently giving an attacker the perfect window to ask your teller for change before the ink on the ledger is dry? Apply these exact patterns rigorously, and I promise you, your smart contracts will be bulletproof. Be sure to visit forge.college to explore more of our educational resources and master Web3 security. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you in the next one.